Georgia-Clemson. This was the neutral site game. They played it in Charlotte at Bank of America Stadium. Exactly 0 offensive touchdowns in this game, Dan.
Correct. Factually correct.
And strangely enough, for as adverse to that setup as I usually am, I found this game highly entertaining.
Yeah, I thought it was mostly entertaining because the defenses lived up to their billing. But I personally need more in the way of adjustments or understanding of what is and isn't working, which is an adjustment element, and creativity. And I know it's week 1, and these offenses specifically are not going to look like what they're going to look like in mid-October, which is a great thing for Clemson and a good thing for Georgia, because I think Georgia might have more of an excuse given what wasn't on the field for Georgia's offense. But there were stretches of this game where like, man, they are laying the lumber. Also, I wish there would be a 26-yard pass at some point.
I know. This was a defensive battle through and through. And ultimately, I think the point we discussed on the previous show ended up being the right one. It was Georgia's ability to generate pressure, in some cases without actually blitzing.
Yeah.
That made a huge impact on this game. 7 sacks of DJ Uiagalelei.
Yeah.
A lot to overcome. It's a lot to overcome. I don't know if it was that his guys weren't getting open down the field. I don't know if the plays were taking just too long to develop. I don't know if it was just that good of a pass rush by Georgia, but the Clemson offensive line did not have any answers for that front 7 with Georgia. And as a result, you saw a couple things happen. You know, you saw DJU, he threw a pick at one point in the second quarter. That was really the only touchdown in the game. 74-yarder went back the other way. Beyond that, no offensive touchdowns to speak of. You also saw at one point later in the game, just because of that front, Clemson all but abandoned the run.
Yeah.
Outside of DJU, scrambled around a little bit, taking some sacks, which shows up on the box score. Not a whole lot of rushing attempts, not much of an attempt to stay super balanced on that Clemson side of the ball.
Including sacks. 0.1 yards. Yeah. I don't know what 10% of 3 feet is, but it's not in feet. So
yeah. And you know, on the Georgia side, we talk about Clemson and some of their struggles on offense because the Georgia defense is very good, especially up front. Georgia's offense struggled too. They just achieved a little bit more balance, but they were very risk averse. At one point, I was thinking to myself, are we watching the Jake Fromm era Georgia football again? It was just that kind of game. It was going to have to be that kind of game as we got into the flow of it with how good both defenses were. Just 4.5 yards per attempt for JT Daniels. We didn't get any answers as to who his go-to guys are going to be out wide. You know, like Brock Bowers, the tight end, had a pretty good game. He got most of the work in the passing game. But beyond that, out wide, it wasn't a game where they took a lot of chances. If you're giving a game ball out, if you're Georgia, I guess to Zamir White, who
I'd give it to Nakobe Dean, but yeah, on the offense, Zamir White, yeah.
On the offense for sure. Nakobe Dean was great on defense. We can talk more about that if you want.
Sure.
But Zamir White had a couple big runs to really get things going. So just a defensive slugfest. Usually that's not my brand of football, but in this case, maybe it was because it was sheer novelty of being week 1, trying to figure out who these teams were. I don't know. I found the game very entertaining despite the fact that there wasn't a whole lot of scoring. So I thought a really good way to start out the season. Yeah. And this is a game that we've talked so much about that it was good to actually see how these teams stacked up.
It is fascinating that if you had asked Clemson fans, even the last couple of years, like what's the position group that hasn't been recruited and developed on the level of others, I think unanimously they would point to offensive line, right? If you look at the guys that have been drafted, the guys who've been all ACC, all conference, it's up and down the offense, up and down the defense on all 3 levels of that defense. Receiver obviously has popped, quarterback has popped. The offensive line has not been consistent. I think it's Robbie Caldwell's the offensive line coach. You remember him from Turkey insemination fame way back when during his time at Vanderbilt. But it's a weakness. It's a Clemson weakness that we saw Ohio State take advantage of in the playoff last year. Clemson now on a losing streak, to be clear. On a losing streak, which is wild. And I anticipate this being something that obviously the coaching staff knows, but DJU was uncomfortable for 4 straight quarters. fully uncomfortable. There were weird snap issues. There were timing issues. He was flushed constantly. He had like half a second at times because of how well Georgia got home. And again, like you mentioned, not with a lot of help, not a lot of blitzing all of the time. It was just the sheer violence of the Georgia pass rush that got home a lot. So, yeah, back to the drawing board for Clemson to figure out a way to scheme around that. I'm sure they knew going in Georgia was going to present a pretty huge challenge there. But, yeah, this Clemson team offensively, it looked completely lost. And I get it's Georgia, and I get that. I mean, you claim this might be the best defensive line in the country after, watching and previewing and all that. But this is Clemson. They have to have answers. They have to have answers that results in a touchdown. A touchdown. We are not asking a lot of a playoff caliber team, and this goes both ways, to score a touchdown on offense. And so I came away ultimately, I guess, neutral on Georgia. It's impressive to win a game without scoring an offensive touchdown, but at the same time, you've recorded on an unprecedented level for your program. And even knowing the guys that are out of this game, George Pickens, Washington, the tight end, whatever, there are still guys on this offense. We're talking about, we came into the season saying JT Daniels is the best returning SEC quarterback, and we can't lead a touchdown drive? Granted, Clemson's defense, excellent. A touchdown drive. That worries me, especially, and I know we're going to get here, especially considering what Georgia has on the other side of the conference, potentially in the championship game, especially with how fast Jamison Williams is and how comfortable immediately Bryce Young looks and how good, but not great, but deep that running back group looks for Alabama. That's what we're comparing right now, Georgia and Clemson against. And I came away just sort of unmoved.
Unclear.
Yeah.
No, unclear, unmoved. I think it's all relative to week one.
And it's week one.
Both teams will improve.
Yeah.
But the criticism cuts both ways for sure on the offensive side of the ball. Georgia wins 10-3.
Yeah.
10-3, very low scoring game. Hope you bet the under. Only one member of this broadcasting duo took Georgia.
That's true.
Got lucky this week, but
one member also told you to bet against LSU like 7 months ago in last night's game. So, take the good with the bad.
And I needed a dog to confirm it for me. We'll get to that one momentarily.
Hey, thanks for watching. Consider, if you haven't, subscribing to the channel and hitting that little bell to be alerted, and listening to the podcast at solidverbal.com.